Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's conference at the White House Initiative on HBCU Week. My name is Dominique James. You will be joined by Audrey Henson just momentarily, but I'd love to invite you and welcome you to today's session, Ahead of the Curve, Positioning HBCU Students to Lead in Public Service. Let me give you a sneak peek into everything we're going to cover in today's session. So first, we'll obviously start off with introductions. Then we're going to give you a quick history lesson on not only interning on congressional internships on the Hill, but more broadly what the landscape looks like for public careers in public service, as well as the opportunity for all HBCU students and alum. The second thing we're going to learn today is how to create pathways in public service and what you can actually do to make meaningful change in your community and the country and the world. Most importantly, number three, we are going to do career planning. So helping you, giving you that cheat sheet and that roadmap, everything that you need to kickstart your careers in public service. And last but not least, we are going to conclude with a few takeaways and action items. We are going to have a jam-packed hour together. I don't expect you to walk away with everything that you need to go and take over the world. However, you're going to have a great head start, and we're going to share contact information on how we can help you continue your journey. But before we begin, let me introduce myself so you know exactly who you're talking to. So hello, everyone. My name is Dominique James. I'm the founder of a political consulting firm called Politics with Purpose. So I work with purpose-driven leaders, causes, and brands, just like yourselves, to help them create positive change in the world. It is HBCU week, and I am a proud HBCU graduate. I graduated from Spelman College. Shout out to all of my fellow Spelmanites and Spelman sisters and everyone in the HBCU family. I'm originally from Denver, Colorado. While I now work in politics and in public service, I actually got my start in corporate career, in corporate communications. However, I knew my passion was helping people. I wanted to do it as much as I could. So that led me to start volunteering and eventually working on political campaigns. I've served in a presidential administration, or I should say an executive branch, as well as have helped organizations, causes, and leaders at every level of office create change in their communities. I would love to introduce you to our second speaker of the day, Miss Audrey Henson. Before she introduces herself, I just want to brag on her for a quick second. So not only am I honored to call her a dear friend, she is absolutely a woman who is changing the world. So don't let anyone tell you that you are too young to make a difference. I know we see it on the news every day. Audrey Henson, she's actually a Forbes 30 under 30 winner. She has won countless awards in politics and in public service for the work that she is doing to help students kickstart their careers in public service. Audrey and I are kindred spirits. We were both raised by single parents. We both came from very poor backgrounds, wanted to make a difference, didn't know how, both had the Pell Grants. And so I was so honored when she invited me to work alongside her to build College to Congress and to make meaningful change in the communities. And we are in for a real treat to have her speak with us today. So Audrey, I'll let you take it away and you can tell them all the professional stuff.
Well, thank you, Dominique. And I mean, I just want to echo all those sweet things right back at you. When I first created College to Congress, Dominique was actually the first person who I came to and said, will you join these efforts? And, you know, we have been so lucky to get to work with each other in a number of different capacities. Even when we're on opposite sides of the aisle, still getting to work together. So I feel really lucky to have the friendship and the professional relationship that we have. So I'm excited to be here today with you and sharing what we've learned with the HBCU students here this week with the White House Initiative. As Dominique mentioned, you know, my story is really why I created College to Congress. I grew up with a single mom in a small Texas town. The only reason I ended up even going to college was because I got that federal Pell Grant. And who could say no to free money to go get an education? I certainly couldn't. What I ended up discovering, though, is so much of the aid and help that low-income students get in their careers is really on that front end. And once you graduate or you're near graduation, you're just kind of dumped off. You're left wanting more, needing more help. Like you just need that final step to really break that cycle of poverty and get you over the hump. And there's not a lot of resources out there to do that. And so that's where I created College to Congress, so that students who come from backgrounds like ours, who want to use their experience, who want to bring that unique perspective into Washington, D.C. or their state capitals, have the resources to do that. And so really excited to be here today and to share what we've learned these last 4 years. Since forming College to Congress, we've fully sponsored about 40 students to come to DC on a full ride scholarship to intern in Congress. And now with COVID-19, we've done a full pivot online, and we've created a program called C2C university.org. We call it C2CU for short. It's easier to remember. And it's really taking the best of everything we do at College to Congress. So the hard skill training on how Congress actually works, how do you operate within those halls, how do you push your career forward and still be a good teammate for your member of Congress that has their own agenda, but then the soft skills too. How do you navigate Washington, D.C. or maybe a really expensive state capital? How do you know if you want to work in an administration or at a lobbying firm or a communication shop? So we do all of that on C2CU. It's all free. We're also going to hook you up with a mentor who is going to work one-on-one and guide you through that process and help you land a virtual paid internship. And I think that's really one of the most tangible, exciting parts of C2CU is it's not just another training website, which, you know, the training is great, but it's actually creating opportunity in a place where right now I know a lot of students feel like there's not a lot of opportunity out there. Real quick, in addition to my work at College to Congress, prior to this, I worked in politics, both in the House and Senate, and then helped get 3 women elected. So that's the lens I bring here today. I know Dominique has so many candidates that have won. I don't even know the total tally right now. And we know that's going to be changing, getting even higher again in November. So we're just really excited to help you navigate this world of public service and give you the tools that you need to get started.
I couldn't agree more. And with that, let's go ahead and dive right in. So the first part of our conversation today is focused on the past, present, and the future. And you can't know where you want to go unless you understand where we've been. And you said something so important earlier today, where you said whether you want a career as a lobbyist, you're working in Congress, or even on the political consulting side, one of the reasons why we don't have the representation we currently need is because that pipeline was broken. So if you don't mind, would you mind giving us a quick history lesson and how the pipeline has really disadvantaged not only HBCU students, but students with background like ours who have the passion, but not necessarily the pocketbooks to make it work?
Absolutely, absolutely. So how did people used to get hired in politics? It is what we see in the movies. I always like to tell people what you see in the movies, it's not today, it's not realistic, but it used to be. And that's where it comes from. So it was all about who you know, not what you know. How much money your family makes. Can they afford this 10 grand experience to send you to Congress for 2 months to intern? And then once you get that internship, you're really considered vetted already. And so that's what I think is so broken about the way it used to work is it wasn't hard for someone to get in if they had the connections and the money. And then once they were in, they were already validated. And they didn't have to, work harder or really earn their own keep. And so we know that that's broken. We're fixing it. And I think the present is going to look a little better. And I'm excited to get to chat with you about that. But yeah, I mean, the world before technology, it was all hearsay, right? a member of Congress or a chief of staff would call someone they knew, say, here's an open position, and then they'd slide right in. So not a lot of transparency.
Yeah, I'll share a little bit when we get to the career planning part of everything. But as I, just look back at my own career, it's every job I've had up until creating my own company, it was a referral. And somebody who knew somebody who asked if I was free or wanted a job or vice versa. And so I know one of the reasons why I really believe in the work that you do with College to Congress is because you're really solving for both sides of that equation, both giving people access as well as the means to break into that industry and giving them those allies at the start. Okay, so now let's talk about the present landscape. So 2020 has obviously been a crazy year. And I know under normal circumstances, College to Congress would run both an in-person internship experience. So you'd fly students out to DC, cover all of their costs, pair them with mentors, cover housing, food, etc. So they could just focus on being awesome interns and building up their network and getting the skills necessary. COVID changed that. So what do you see as the, what's today's impact, or what's the impact on today's generation of college students?
So, when we talk about the present, I kind of think pre, and during and post COVID. So the beginning of this year, we were already making headways. The last 4 years, we've gotten over $30 million appropriated for paid internships. So that alone is opening the doors. It's making Congress more accessible. Another big win that I think, students can take advantage of in the present is the fact that there is more transparency to that hiring process. With the internet and with so many job postings, and C2CU runs a job posting list too, you have access to what offices are hiring, whether it's in Congress or the administration or even political campaigns. There's a lot more resources to find, the best position for you. As you mentioned, Dominique, with COVID, now what's different? Well, I feel like this is one of the few things that's actually become better because of COVID. And it's because we've really gotten, with virtual internships, we've really gotten rid of the biggest barriers to experience within Congress. And that is, of course, physically getting here and then being able to afford to stay here. So with the virtual, I know, right? So with a virtual internship, you can still say, yes, I interned for my senator and I met these 10 people who are now mentoring me and helping me get a job. But a lot of the risk is taken out of it, and you're not having to go in debt. Or you're also not having to say no to being with your family, or you're not having to take a semester off school. I really think it's a win-win. I'm excited for students right now. I know a lot of people are bored at home, but what I want to emphasize is figure out exactly where in public service you want to explore, and just go do an internship online right now. You have nothing to lose.
That is so important. A lot of people don't know that Washington, D.C. is actually one of the most expensive cities in the country. And it can literally cost upwards of $10,000 to afford a summer here. And, looking at my background and the family that you come from as well, that's like a ridiculous amount of money, and you'd have to work one or multiple part-time jobs just to be able to afford that. So I love that you highlighted that there's a silver lining in everything that's gone on with COVID, is because virtual and remote internships are actually more accessible than ever. And we both know that congressional offices look for constituents. And so you can really connect people to their member of Congress and to democracy. Okay, and as we conclude part one, let's look toward the future. And really the reason that we're all here today, and why I really love the title of today's session, so getting ahead of the curve. So by 2050, the U.S. is projected to be a majority non-white nation. However, our government institutions will not necessarily reflect that diversity unless we take action today. And the real problem with that is that as society changes on the outside, if our institutions aren't changing on the inside, we're going to miss all of the perspectives and the voices necessary to write the laws we need to match, where society is at that time. So can you speak to what, the future of this industry looks like, and why HBCU students, whether you're listening live, you're going to listen to the recording, or down the road, why you should absolutely could pursue a career in public service, and why your voices are needed more than ever?
Absolutely. And again, I remain optimistic about this because the Gen Z generation is already the most diverse generation we have. 52% of Gen Z young people are already, a part of the minority group, as we say, or non-white. And so they're already more reflective of our country than other generations combined. And so I think this generation really has this like beautiful moment of the nation is prime and ready for a change in leadership. Congress has been really criticized. It's not just Congress. I shouldn't just call Congress out, but really all of our elected leaders. They know that they don't look like the nation, that they don't have that lived experience, and that they need new perspective. And then we have this national dialogue happening right now about race, about social injustice, about needing people who have lived these challenges and bringing them to the table to provide solutions. Because clearly the way we're doing it right now isn't working.
Not working.
Not working.
At all.
And so I remain optimistic for, current HBCU students, even alum who are maybe thinking about a career change and wanting to, just like you, maybe they started corporate, and now they want to go see what it's like to take that skill set and put it into public service.
Awesome. So that is a perfect segue into the pathways to public service. And I don't know about folks on the line, but I always say kind of stumbled into politics. So I really had no idea what I was doing. I was fortunate enough to be part of a couple of internship programs where they provided me a lot of experience, and sometimes it's doing stuff that you like or you don't like. It gives you clarity on where you want to go, and that is true for me. You said at the beginning of this call, you talked about, being a lobbyist or working in local government or working for a member of Congress. Can you speak really quickly to some of the different pathways that exist in public service, and how College to Congress has helped students really launch their careers in public service?
Yeah, of course. And, I think the best way to share, the different options available is to just highlight our students and what they've done. Our first student you'll see pictured here is Brandon Henry. He's an HBCU student from Howard. He interned with College to Congress. And he's young too. So don't, like Dominique said, don't think that your age is against you. I think he was 19 when we first met him. And he knew that he wanted to work in Congress. He wanted to explore what it would be like to live a life of service and leadership. And he got very lucky. We helped him land an internship with John Lewis's office. And the thing I love the most about this story is he was a sponge. He went into that office, he soaked up all the information and knowledge, and he came out of it and said, you know what, I'm going to go back to Atlanta and I'm going to start a nonprofit with my friend, and I'm going to find another way to help and to leave my legacy. And so I think, when you think about public service, it's not always what we picture. For me, it turned into nonprofit work and helping people get into public service. For Brandon, it turned into finding ways to get people in the community connected to resources. For other students like Joshua Cardenas, who's right here pictured next to Brandon, it is staying in that Capitol, and it is writing legislation. And so Joshua's story is really so fantastic because he came in with the C2C program. He interned for Senator Kamala Harris, and he never went back home. He said, this is exactly where I belong. This is where I want to be. And this is the career I've chosen for myself. And even after his internship, he still had to complete another internship because he hadn't landed a job yet. And he did over 80 coffees. So sitting one-on-one with people, networking, doing interviews, asking them, do you know of open positions? Then COVID hit right when he was about to get his big break. I'm like, whew, sometimes when it rains, it pours.
Yes.
And just recently, he was hired full-time in Senator Harris's office. And we all know Senator Harris, first HBCU alum to be on a presidential ticket. That's right, Dom. Am I misquoting? Yeah, so very exciting. He could potentially be in the White House, pending election. So it's really interesting to see, where these careers lead and how these doors can open. I also wanted to highlight Mia here. Mia was a part of our 2018 class. She interned for Senator Maggie Hassan. She was our first C2C student to take her internship and get hired, and she turned it around pretty quickly. And she's working with Senator Doug Jones right now. So anyone who follows politics knows that's a battleground seat in a very difficult state to keep down. And so she's not only getting that policy experience, being in the Senate, she's getting a really great glimpse into what the political life is like. And,
absolutely.
With your work, Dominique, you know how much politics plays a role in policy. And so she's definitely getting that viewpoint. Last but not least, I wanted to highlight Ryan here. Ryan is a fantastic person all around. He, left high school, joined the military. After that, of course, was a veteran, used his GI Bill to go to college, decided I still want to pursue public service. I loved my work in the military serving. I want to continue that. He did an internship with College to Congress in Washington, D.C., and just like Brandon, use that experience to bring it back home and improve his community. Now he's working for the local county commissioner and simultaneously also starting a nonprofit to connect veterans to resources in his community. And so I love the diversity of these stories here, because it just goes to show there's no one size fits all. You have to follow your heart, but you also have to take that initiative to take this first step, whether it's a virtual internship or, whether it's coming in person next summer. Hopefully we're all open and we're able to do that. I think we're all like wishing, hoping, praying for that right now.
Yes. Excellent, excellent. So I know that we have buttered you up and talked about all the amazing pathways, but I want you to know that there is a place for you in Congress and in public service. And HBCU students and alum are absolutely making the difference, from students like Brandon, who you saw on the previous slide, to we actually have over 17 HBCUs represented in Congress, and I'm sure that level is larger as you look at different levels of government and of service. So don't fall into stereotypes. There's tons of different ways to make an impact and to serve your community, and public service careers are absolutely the place for you. Now, as we move to our final portion of the day, this is actually the most important part, so I hope you all are still with me. We're going to do a little bit of career mapping. So Audrey already shared that there are different ways, different pathways to success or actualize your potential, if you will, in public service. We're going to give you two techniques that are included in C2C University, but we're going to start some of that thinking for you now. So the first process, if you will, is called forward planning. And then, if you guessed it, the second process that Audrey will share is called backward planning. So we are in a digital world, but I need you to get a little old school with me. So go and grab a pen and some paper, just so you can follow along and take some quick notes as you so that you can participate in our session now, and obviously do it during in the recording. So forward planning, I really relate to this because it kind of mirrors my experience, where I kind of let my skill sets and my experiences dictate the right opportunity for me, versus, as Audrey will share with you, kind of knowing exactly where you wanted to end up, and then you kind of work backward to achieve that goal. And so for me, the first step in career planning is really to gain clarity on who you are and what you bring to the table. So my experience so far has really focused on communications-based work. And in my consulting company, I lean heavily into communications, not only traditional, social, PR, and then overall strategy. So based on where you are today, I'd love for you to focus on what skills and credentials you currently have. And I don't want you to discredit everything. So actually, if I quickly think back all those years ago when I was a college student, but I actually interned, or excuse me, didn't intern. I worked part-time in addition to going to school. So I had a lot of retail and sales experience, customer service experience that I was bringing to the table. I had actually a number of retail jobs, including a waitress, as a sales associate, as well as a barista at a local coffee shop on my campus. I also had the opportunity to do some interning with a corporate company where I was able to sit in on some of those strategic planning calls and really learn how to talk to different analysts and reporters and understanding how people cover the news. I had to do media coverage and reports, and more importantly, learned how to write summaries of that report to deliver to leadership. So as you think about, let's say, for example, you're communications or you're currently studying communications or PR, let's think about potential jobs that you can pursue that would allow you to, really strengthen that experience or strengthen that skill set, or that are going to allow you to express it in a different way. Moving forward, so as I look at my career, after I learned, had a couple of or a couple of jobs and internships that allowed me to develop my voice as a communicator, I realized actually that I love serving people. So I worked in an office environment, but I realized that I needed to be like mobile and move around a little bit more. And I was at my best when I was talking and communicating with people. So actually, that's when an opportunity opened up to work on a political campaign as a field organizer. And this looks a little bit different now that COVID has forced a lot of campaigns to do remote work and organizing. But your field organizers are really your boots on the ground, if you will, the face of your candidate or your issue or your cause in your community. You're still honing in on that communication work. I was able to use a lot of my sales background and experience of inspiring people, motivating people, but that really, that experience helped strengthen my skill set in terms of being able to relate and communicate with diverse groups of people, regardless of where they lived in the country, getting people to rally around a certain cause. So being able to effectively communicate the impact of an issue to a particular group of people and why they should care, and organizing people, so building structures and systems to achieve particular goals, and then ultimately, delivering wins and having successes for that. So as you look at a first potential job or experience and then those skill sets, you really want to think about what related skills or industries could really use your expertise. And again, I had a few more years of working on campaigns, experiencing different roles from communications to field to fundraising, so that when the opportunity presented itself, or when I was at a career crossroads, I should say, and I was deciding whether to go work for a different organization or a company, so taking all of those skills that I had, or maybe it made sense to just chart my own path and take all of the skills that I had acquired and instead focus and target them on serving groups of people. That's what inspired me and gave me the confidence to create my own consulting firm, or my own company, I should say, where I specialize in communications consulting and strategy, because it's the culmination of all of the skills that I've brought to the table, rather than a specific role that I was out to achieve. I hope that makes sense. So as we conclude this forward mapping, just go ahead and start to jot down the kind of skill sets that you bring to the table. Are you the kind of person that people always go to ask for advice? Are you really good at selling things as a waitress or a salesperson or whatever your internship experience is? Are you a great writer? Are you good with numbers and statistics and polling? Or even are you good, you may be studying business and you're learning how to build systems and organizations. All of those skill sets are transferable to a career in public service. I'll kick it over to you, Audrey, to talk about backward planning.
I think those are, actually all exercises that you can use while doing this too. And so, even if you want to use backward planning, and I'm about to dive into what that is, everything Dominique said about really understanding yourself is going to be helpful for this. And, as we're sitting here today trying to position you ahead of the curve and really make sure that you're using this quarantine to really figure out where you belong and where you're going to go next. That pathway that Dominique just provided is incredibly useful. Everyone's brain's different. Everyone learns differently. The way that I learn is really by looking at where I want to end up and working backwards from there. And so this is something that I use a lot actually in our organization for challenges. So it makes sense to use it even personally too for where I want to see my career going. And so how does backwards career mapping actually work? Well, just like Dominique was talking about, first you're going to reflect on what your values are, what your assets are, and what your skills are that you already have. And then think of the kind of career you want to pursue. For me, I knew I wanted to be serving people and having a career where I wanted to have an impact. I didn't necessarily know that that was going to be Congress, but I knew it would be in the political industry. So that was helpful. I said, I want to work in politics. What's next? Seems kind of daunting if you think about it like that. And so that's why it's helpful to have this map. It's helpful to really break it down, because otherwise you'll feel like you're lost in a sea of opportunity. So what do you do next? Well, you look at where you want to end up. Say, let's use the example of running for, president. I want to run for president one day. So if I want to be president, what do I need to do right before that? Well, I'll probably be a senator or, a chairman of a very influential committee on the House. Okay, well, how did I end up there? I may have been a lawyer beforehand in a private practice. I may have been an advocate working at a trade association or an advocacy firm. I could have been a small business owner. Do any of those interest me? I start building that web and figuring out, Xing out exactly what is, less appealing and what is more appealing. And it can be, I'm using a big example, right? Running for president. You don't have to pick something that big, but you see how you just continue to work back each and every step. And so something I do want to caveat this with is, after talking to students from all across the nation, I think a lot of times in college that people think, I need to know where I'm going to be in 30 years. And the purpose of this career mapping, that's not what we're trying to stress you out with. In fact, I tell all of our students, think about the next 5 to 7 years. Where do you want to be in 5 to 7 years? So if I were to sit down, 21-year-old Audrey, to sit down to do this, I would have known I want to be in Congress. And so that next step would have been, okay, what do I need to do to get to Congress? I know that people either work on political campaigns, and that's one way they get up, or they go intern and they get up that way. And so the closer you are and the less time you're taking into consideration when you're mapping, the more helpful this exercise is going to be. So take a screenshot of these two maps, jot it down, and you can make different maps for different careers. So if you want to explore, like, what would it look like if I were a political fundraiser? What would it look like if I were a political advertising consultant, or if I worked at the Department of Education? There's so many opportunities. So don't limit yourself to just, being too focused on one. Really explore that entire plethora of opportunities ahead of you. And hopefully, it'll be helpful to you like it has been for hundreds of students in College to Congress. Unfortunately, I think that is bringing us to the end of our hour. So I'd love to go over some takeaways to ensure that you are getting the most out of this time, that you do indeed feel ahead of the curve now that you have this useful exercise and this information. and make sure that we leave you also with some encouraging words. And first and foremost, I want to say, hey, we need you. Our nation needs you to come solve our toughest policy challenges. The entire reason I created College to Congress was because I didn't see stories like Dominique's and mine represented in Congress. I'd be in rooms all day long of people trying to fix food stamps or fix different subsidies, and none of them had been on it. And I would just giggle and say, that's actually not how that works. So if we're going to fix it, why don't we bring in some people who have this lived experience? So
amen.
Yes, bring that experience. And one, just make sure you're being patient with yourself. You're not going to have everything figured out in an hour. You're not going to have everything figured out in a day. But it's taking that initiative and taking those steps and being patient with the world, being patient with your family. Right now is a time to be patient and to be thoughtful and to ensure that you're being flexible, right? There is a lot of really tough things happening right now that are quite frankly out of our control. So the more you can be nimble and kind of work your way into opportunity, the better it will be for you.
Excellent. I couldn't agree more. And just to touch on a few of our other takeaways, Audrey already said it. Come public service, we need you, and bring your expertise. And that not only includes all of the skills you're learning, whether it's from being a waiter or a server, or whether you are learning coding or business planning, whatever it is, we need your expertise. And there is absolutely a place and a need for you in Congress and our federal government and in the political industry more broadly. Which brings me to number 3, which is bring your passion. And what a perfect timing for this particular session, because as we see, in our country, we're really at a turning point and we're challenging a lot of the old systems and leaders and ways of doing things that we recognize don't necessarily serve what we need today. So bring your passion. So if you're passionate about racial justice and you have ideas, for example, how to reform our criminal justice system or police force, absolutely get involved. Come help make change from the inside out and write those laws and legislation. Or maybe you want to run for office and be the voice and the champion of the people for that cause. As Audrey shared, maybe you have a lived experience of either coming from an immigrant family, or maybe you and your family have had to navigate Pell Grants or free and reduced lunch. Audrey and I have experienced both of those things. We need your expertise on how to reform and how to build really smart and a more efficient and safe immigration system for everyone. Whatever your passion is, whether it's environment or housing, there is a place and a need for you. So absolutely get involved in politics and public service, because we can absolutely use your passion and your expertise now more than ever.
Right. Yeah.
And last but not least, be prepared.
Yeah, our nation
Audrey
is so hungry for that. And that's why we need you to be prepared. We're calling you to service, so we need you to get ready for that service. You picked this workshop for a reason. Something in you said, I want to get ahead. I want to dedicate my life to service. I'm going to tell you exactly how. And it's free, which is the best part right now. Let's be honest, we're in a pandemic.
free.
Yeah, free 99. That's the way we all like it to be. So we don't expect you to have your entire life figured out right now. I hope this hour has been helpful, but I imagine you're hungry for more. So the good news is at College to Congress, we can provide that for you. So if you go to c2cuniversity.org, you can sign up for free trainings, free classes. We'll even place you with a mentor who is going to work one-on-one with you and help you land a virtual paid internship. As our country reopens and evolves, we're going to be adding in-person internships on the platform too. So don't feel like you're pigeonholed at all. We're going to continue evolving and adapting to ensure that we're helping HBCU students all across the country. So go to c2cuniversity.org and let us help you dedicate your career to public service and to helping others, so that you come home every day, you have a smile on your face, you feel good about positively impacting our country. And with that, I think that is all we have today, Dominique. If you have any last words, I know that we wanted to make sure that our information is available to you. Find Dominique and I on LinkedIn. Reach out, ask us for that virtual coffee. We're happy to do that. You can keep in touch and keep the conversation going with College to Congress on Twitter or at our Instagram page at College to Congress. And we hope to see you in Congress soon.
Can't wait to join all of you. Thanks so much for your time, Audrey. Thank you, everyone. I encourage you to reach out to College to Congress. Let's lock arms. We're committed to your success. Have a great evening, everyone.